Okay. So hello everyone. Welcome to week 4 of 31 Days of Flutter. So for this week, we're going to be covering animations. So why did we have a separate topic for animations? Because Flutter initially was designed with animations in mind. Sorry, like earlier, I guess those who are familiar with the old ways of building apps in Android, like there was a little bit of complexity in trying to implement animations, where mostly you have to use XML files and then you have to use some other external libraries just to even get maybe a certain component uh, move from left to right in the screen. So Flutter saw that, and in a way to modernize app development and app and UI and UX in order to keep up with the trends in UI UX design, Flutter has introduced native apps, native widgets where you can create your own animations quite easily, I guess, with just 1 or 2 lines of code, and you have your animations in place. So I guess for the last few weeks, Mr. Krishan and Mr. Manoj has given you a very thorough introduction to what Flutter is capable of. For example, like set state and all the different layouts. So those are very important fundamental concepts to get you started in your Flutter journey. So for this week, let's start with animations. I don't have a slide per se because Flutter has very good documentations on how you can use and how you can build animations. For example, if you go to docs Flutter Dev UI animations, they have a very thorough explanation along with videos about each and every animation. So, example, like if you want animations, there are explicit and implicit animations, right? So, for example, implicit animations are those animations which come pre-packaged with the Flutter library, right? For example, like AnimatedContainer that comes natively with Flutter, so you can easily implement that into your own Flutter application. Explicit animations are those animations where you might want to tweak, might want to create custom animations for your app. Something maybe you want like an animation which is more complex. For example, you might want the text to appear on screen and then scale out, then scale in, and then fade out, fade in simultaneously. So for that, you need to use explicit animations, which I don't think so I'll cover here because that's a little bit complicated. So maybe hopefully in the future we'll be doing explicit animations, but for this series we'll be focusing more on implicit animations. But let me just paste this link here. This is a good read, which gives you a good intro into how animations are built into Flutter. So I've pasted them in the chat. Okay, now I know there's a lot of talking, so let me go to the code and demo you some animations. As I described earlier in the group, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add animations to the Cool Flutter app which you've built earlier with Mr. Krishan, the tourism app. So what we need to do is we first need to go to the repository. I guess you're all familiar. Mr. Krishan has given you like a good tutorial on how to pull code from a GitHub repository. If you've skipped that, or maybe you've joined us directly in the session, so one way to do that is I think so you need to install Git in your system. So hopefully you're all familiar with Git. Now the next step is you need to copy the repository. What we can do is we can go to the repository, to any GitHub repository for the matter, but we're going to use the tourism app static, which Mr. Krishan has created earlier. So go to code, and you need to copy the URL link for that particular repo. Now, what you need to do is you need to go to a particular directory. If you're using Windows 11, you can just open your CMD directly, your CLI command tool anywhere. So, but I'm using a Git bash. It's almost same thing as the CMD. If you're using Windows 10, what you could do is here, I think you could write CMD right on the top, and then open up your command. So let's open up the command prompt. Now I need to write here the git command, and I need to clone, and I need to paste in the URL. Right, so now let's press enter. So now you can see that I've copied the repo into my folder called 31 Days of Flutter, and inside this folder there's a folder called tourism app static, which is essentially a code from GitHub. Now if we inspect the folder, we can see that it has all the prerequisites of a Flutter app. Now I need to edit the source code here, which is contained in the lib library. For that, we're going to use Visual Studio Code. right? So now let's start our visuals. Let's open Visual Studio Code by using, okay, let's do again the command prompt. So because I'm using Windows 10, it's quite tedious, but if you're using Windows 11, life has been much simpler for you guys because you can just right click and then open your command prompt here. So let's open Visual Studio Code. I trust the author. Trust the authors. Yeah. So now you can see that the code has been opened in Visual Studio Code. I guess you're all familiar about how the file structure in Flutter works. So you have the dependencies or the native libraries for Android here, for your Mac OS, for your Linux, for web, for Windows, and basically all your source code lives in the lib folder. Right. So if you take a look here, you can see that it's giving us errors. It's saying that it cannot find the material.dart package here. This is because we have to install the packages which our code depends on. So for example, like stateless widget, there's no package installed for that. Right now what you're seeing is just a skeleton of code, right? There's no meat, there's no organs yet, and so this is not a fully functioning code. So in order to do that, what you do is open your terminal, and we need to write Flutter pop get. So before we do that, what will Flutter pop get do? It will first go to your popspec.yaml, which houses your packages, right? So all of your external packages will be included in your popspec.yaml. So for example, dependencies here, we're depending on the Flutter SDK. Dev dependencies, we're using Flutter tests. Dev dependencies are those dependencies which we use only while developing the app, which we don't need to compile them when we are releasing or when we are building the app to production. Dev dependencies won't be bundled when your production APK. Only the packages which are listed here will bundle with your production app, right? If you build a debug, if you build a production app, all your Flutter dependencies, dev dependencies will be removed. So for now, we have Corporate Tuner icons here, right? So Corporate Tuner icons are mostly used when you're building iOS applications. So I think so. This is pretty bare minimum pop spec YAML. We don't have any external packages right now. So let's just do Flutter pop get, which will get your Flutter dependencies. So we press that enter. Let's just take a while to download. So while it's downloading, let me just check on our source code again. Okay, so it's finished downloading, and now you can see that all the errors have been resolved. Right. So yeah. So I guess you're familiar with this code. Yeah, Krishan has given you a good walkthrough on the tourism app. So before we begin our development into animations, so I just want to make sure that because this is a simple project, that's okay, but I want to focus on a file structure basically. So what is folder structure? So each and every app has to be composed in a certain way, right? So that when we are scaling our app, we can easily find different files. We need to place different files into this corresponding folders. For example, we have two screens here. So these are like called screens or pages. We need to place them into like a folder called pages so that we can easily navigate to pages if we need to modify any of the screens, or if there's any error, we can easily pinpoint each folder and navigate accordingly, respectively, to each folder. For example, if you have components or widgets, we need to create a widgets library. If we have utilities, if we have assets, if we have models, for example, which are classes, then we need to create a separate folder for that. I have a good tutorial here. Flutter file structure for big projects. Yeah, this is a good tutorial whereby just forget about big projects, because I feel like if you're creating a Flutter app right now, it's better to always build your app with scaling, with scaling. What do you call that? Build your app with the intention of scaling it later on, right? So it make it easier for you to scale your app. So wait, let me just post this YouTube link in the comment section. Basically, what this tutorial shows you is how do you place your respective files into different folders so that you can easily make your code maintainable and make your code more structured and organized. So let me just show you a good example on that. How are we going to do that? Yeah. So now, I guess Krishan has created two screens for your app. One is the spot details and one is the tourist spots. So tourist spots, I think so. Let me just run the app. Run the app using, okay, let me just use an emulator for that. Sorry, let me just open Android Studio and open an Android emulator for that. Okay. So I right now during this stage I don't necessarily use Android Studio all that much anymore, except when I'm building native apps, and I just use it mostly to open and start the emulator. You can use it from CLI, but yeah, I think so this is much faster. Okay, let me just open. So we have our Android emulator here. Let me just minimize the screen a little bit, minimize the code emulator a bit. Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's just run this app and see how the layout is. So I'm guessing there'll be a list of tourist spots, and if you click on a particular spot, it will navigate you to a different page, which will show you the details. Let me just run it. I hope it's running. Okay, yeah, it's running. Take a little bit of time for it to compile and create a debug file for it. Yeah, so again, I guess even though this is a small project, there's not so much a need for you to reconfigure the folder structure. But as I said earlier, when designing apps, it's better to always make your app scalable right in the beginning so that you won't face any challenges later on, so that you have much more organized, a more organized code base, so that even if you give your code off to maybe your friends, or maybe if you're giving it to someone to help maintain your code, it become easier for them as well. Okay, so we've now got the app running on the emulator. Let me just see how it looks. All right, cool. So we have our tourism app here in place. I think so. We have around 3 locations. So Sweet Falls, yeah, cool. We click on Sweet Falls. We go to the spot details page. We click on Mouse My. Okay, works as expected. Now let's move these off to their own folders, right? So these are 2 pages here. So let's create a new folder called Pages, or Screen for a matter, but I kind of like Pages. I come from React and we call them pages, so let's just keep it consistent. So let's just move these here to the Pages folder, so, and move them. Right, so now we can see that we have a few issues here because we've placed them to a different folder, and main.dart doesn't know where to find these different pages. So let's just delete the import statement here. And what we could do is we could go down, and instead of writing that, we could just click at the end, then control space. Sorry. Control space, and can just click here on the auto completion. And there we have, and it automatically imports your page for you here. So let's go to tourist spots. I guess there's also another issue here. Okay, the issue here is because we are trying to navigate to spot details, but based on the previous import statement here, it's not able to find the particular file because we've moved them to a different folder. So I need to, again, let's just delete this again, and let's just place a cursor here in the middle, control space, and click on spot details, which will automatically import your file for you here. So let's just reload the app again, restart the app, and see that everything is working fine. That's what I like to do, okay? Like, and each new iteration or each modification of code, rerun your app and test it out, see that's working fine, so that if you find issues, you can go back and revert your changes. Otherwise, if you're modifying too many files and you restart the app, you find that there's a few issues, then it becomes quite difficult if you've made too many changes. So maybe you want 2 changes at a time, restart the app again, check, test. Okay, so cool. So our folders is working fine. We have our main Dart, which is the entry to our app. So yeah, now that makes it cleaner. So from main, we navigate to our different pages. Okay, now let's go back to our spot details here. sorry, tourist spots. Okay, so what we have here is an array of places, right? So one is the Sweet Falls, which lists out the name. The second is the short description, and the next is your spot image. A list of all the images. So these images are contained in your assets folder, as you can see here. So Lightroom, Canon, Web P, this one, Mouse My Cave, JPEG here. So if we go to our list view, how is it rendering our tourism app is we're using the image.asset widget. And here asset means that we're pulling images from our assets folder and we give it a name. So what we do is we just iterate or we go through this list here, and for each one we render an image accordingly to the placement of the image, either it's first or second last. For example, the first one is Sweet Falls, so it renders Sweet Falls. The second is Mouse My Cave, and the third is your Lightroom Canyon. This is a good approach, but let's just refactor this a bit so that our networking code works, so that our code becomes compatible if for next week if we are going to the networking session. So where we're going to pull our tourist spot details from APIs. So let's just refactor this a little bit. So what we can do is we can create a class for the tourist spot, right? So I guess you're all familiar with class. If not, maybe you can always ask questions during the session. I will maybe help rectify any issues you might have. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to create a new folder called models. So models are essentially just to simplify this, these are just data points where you can data which needs to be passed around your app. Okay, like this tourist spot here, we'll be creating one class called tourist spot, and we'll be using that when we navigate to the spot details. So for example, we create tourist spot class in the tourist spot page, and when we click on the particular card, we pass that information through that tourist spot class to the other page. Okay, it sounds complicated at first, I know, but okay, let's hopefully I can simplify it through code. So let's create a tourist spot class here. Okay, let's follow the naming convention for Dart. Dart follows the snake case convention. So each file has to follow snake case. Snake case, what snake case is, obviously it's separated by a underscore, right? Pascal case is when the next letter is capital. Snake case is where you separate words using an underscore. So for example, now we can create tourist and then underscore spot dot dart. If you don't do this, your ESLint or okay, let me just show you again. Let me just rename this again. Refactor, sorry. Oops. So if I rename this to, why can I rename the? Okay, just make that full screen again. Rename. Okay, so let's just use a conventional. So in Java, I guess we need to rename our classes in capital letters, right? So that's a convention. So if we do that in Dart, you can see it throws an error here, right? So it says that the file name to respond isn't snake case identifier. So that goes against Dart's convention, which is using a snake case. So if you're wondering what is this tool here called, I'm using extension from VS Code called error lengths. This one here. So what you can do, you can install this extension to your VS Code environment, and if you have any errors or warnings, it will show the error basically on the main editor instead of having to view them here itself in the terminal, which becomes not terminal. Sorry, I mean in this lower section here, it becomes quite difficult to detect bugs or warnings. So what I did was this package really helps me a lot in catching early errors and warnings. So let's go back to the code. So again, code lengths if you're or error lengths if you're interested. So let's go back to tourist spot. Where's that view? Sorry, again here. Now let's go back here. So let's go back here to the file. Let's rename it again to using the snake case convention. So tourist underscore spot. So now it doesn't complain anymore. So Dart is happy and all's well. So let's create a class here called tourist. Right, so okay, so now your tourist spot here, this is a class. So what it needs is it needs fields, right? So what kind of fields do we need in our tourist spot class? So for that, we can go back to our data, which we have passed earlier. So we need a name, we need a description, and we also need the image source, right? From where do we fetch the image? Either from an asset, or do we fetch them from a URL for that matter, right? So let's create a tourist spot here. So let's add here a field called string. So the type will be string name. String name, and then let's add another field here called string description. And let's add another field called string image source. So yeah. Again, not to confuse you, snake case is only for your files, but here you can use your regular Pascal case, or your regular class names for that matter inside the code itself. It just remember that's just only for the file. So now string name, string description, and image source. Now we need to create a constructor for this storage spot. Right, so constructor, we'll call it maybe, let's create a const constructor. Now inside this constructor here, we can pass our constructor arguments. So we can pass we can write, I like dot syntax because it's quite simple. So for the matter, if you want, in other programming languages, what you need to do is, if you need to pass a name here, you need to write name. And then inside your constructor, then if you want to assign this name here, which is the argument, to the class field name, what you need to do is you need to write this dot name equal to name, right? So this dot name here refers to this value, this field here, and name is the argument which you receive inside constructor. But in Dart, you can simplify this by using this directly on the argument itself. So let me show you again. What we can do is we can just write directly this dot name. It's pretty cool, right? It simplifies the entire development process, makes coding a lot much faster if you can do this directly. So this dot name here means that whatever argument you receive inside a constructor, it will automatically assign it to the class field. Okay, so now this name, then we need this description, and we also need this image source. Can define. So here it's saying can define a const constructor for class with non-final fields. So if you look at const, what do you mean const? Const means that this class here, it's non-mutable, right? You cannot change this class once it's created, right? So but these fields here are not const, or they're not final. So that means you can always change these fields, right? So for example, if I do this, let's just create so in your void main, you might have a void main here. And now if you let's create a new instance of tours. So let's just call it, so just give the type here as tourist spot. So this will be tourist spot. This will be the variable equal to tourist spot. Okay, so let's just pass maybe, let's call it lake, and then description. We'll just pass an empty string for now. And the image source, maybe we fetch it from assets / lake png. So now what we have here is an instance of class tourist spot, right? So now if we dissect tourist spot, if we go deep into tourist spot, if you take a look at tourist spot now, if we use a dot annotation, we can access name, right? So now if we print this will print out lake. Right, because why is it printing lake? Is because here we're passing 3 arguments, right? Our constructor takes how many arguments? 3 arguments. The first one is name, the second is description, and the third is image source, right? So the first parameter, which is lake, is passed here. Because we're using this name, this lake here is now stored in our field name. Similarly, with description, which is an empty string, here is stored description. Now, if you look at assets here / image lake, it's passed here. Because we're using this keyword, it is stored in our class field image source. Now, the same manner which we're accessing .name, we can also assign a new. We can also assign a new value here to name something like lake, and this will be park. Right. We can do that, right? So it doesn't complain. Why does it complain? Is because these are not final fields. Okay, so we can always alter them. These are mutable variables. We can alter them at any time we want. But we're defining a const store spot here. So it goes against what we're saying, right? A const store spot means that this store spot is a constant. It shouldn't mutate. The data inside it shouldn't change. But here we're changing the data from lake to park. So it throws an error. So what we could do is we could add the final keyword to our field here. Right. So what final does is now it throws an error. You can see that now name can be used to settle because it's final. What final does is initially this name here is null, right? It's nothing has been assigned to it. But once we assign lake to it, lake, now this name here is fixed with the value lake. Now if I add park here, you cannot change it anymore. Right, so again, let's go back. So initially, when you're when you're creating a variable with the final keyword here, it means that this name here initially is empty, right? But when you assign a value, it takes onto that value, it grabs onto that value, right? It doesn't let go of that value, so that even if you add another value to name here, it throws an error saying that, hey, name has already been assigned a lake value here. I cannot take on a new value here, park. So yeah, it throws an error. So that's why we have the final keyword here. Now your class tourist spot is truly immutable. It's truly a constant. Okay. So I hope that any questions before I move ahead regarding classes? So I guess no questions, right? Okay, now let's put our class into action. So how are we going to use this to store our tourist spot details? Right, now let's go back to tourist spots here. Yeah. So now, in order to do that, in order to assign all of these, right, to the tourist object, what we need to do is we need to iterate through all of this list, right? So what we can do is we can create another function here because it's a stateless widget. What we need to do, I think, so let's create an state, or we can create a build. Okay. Okay, let's convert this. Let's convert this to a stateful widget, I guess. So in order to convert this to, why do you need a stateful widget? Because we need to maintain certain state here. Okay, our animation will use the animation controller state where we need to store, like for example what values this animation state store is, we need to store the value, right? For example, like, should I show this particular animation? If it's yes or true. So if it's true, show animation. False, don't show animation. So that needs to be stored in a state. Otherwise, if you don't store a state, if this entire component re-renders, right, our state will be lost. It will be wiped. It will start from scratch. So for example, if your is show animation is true, but I want it to be false, it'll always be true because it always reassigns the value from scratch, from start. So now let's convert this into a stateless widget, or stateful widget, sorry. So in order to do that, let's click here and we'll click on this light bulb here and convert to a stateful widget. Right, so now you can see that it's converted to a stateful widget. We have the state here, and along with the stateful widget, what we can do is we have access to the init state function. So this is init state function is where we can initialize our states here. Right, so okay, let's start here with init state. Now the first step is we need to convert this into our class tourist spot. So how do we do that? So in order to do that, what we could do is this will take a little bit of time. What we could do is we could create a map of all this information here. Right, a map is similar to a JSON object. I guess people who have worked with JSONs before will recognize the format. But if not, then let me just create here a JSON equivalent object in Dart. So a JSON object is essentially a map in Dart. So what we call in JavaScript as an object, we call here as a map. So we'll have here, let's just declare a variable called map here. And inside the map will be a string and a string. And then here we'll have maybe tourist spot. This is just one tourist spot. Okay, tourist spot. So equal to a map. If you look at the syntax here, an array starts with those square brackets, but a map starts with, it's enclosed in the curly brackets, right? So here string and string here refers to the data type of the key and the value pair. Okay, so what is a key and value pair? So inside here, your object or map here, what we can do is we can define a key called a name. A name should always be inside double quotes, okay, because it's a string, right? So the data type of a string is always name. And now let's add name. Maybe this will copy the name here called sweet false. Okay, so sweet false. This is your name for the tourist spot. And now we add another key called short description. Okay, let's just call it description for the be much simpler. So description. So this is a key called description. And here let's just copy this. This is a waterfall in city of Meghalaya. Okay, we'll copy this description and paste it here. The next part is we need to place the image source, right? So image, where is the image coming from? So for that, I'll create a key called image source. Okay, so let's just place here, because you can see this sweet false, it's coming from this assets folder here. What I could do is I could create a path to it directly, so something like assets, then slash, wait, yeah, what format's using here? Yeah, then / images, then slash, and I'll just copy the name. Sweet false web. Yeah. Now we have our map object. Again, this is the key, this is the value, key and value. So if I want to access this, if I want to access only maybe description, what I need to do is I can use tourist. I can call this variable here tourist spot, and using the dot operator. Oh no, sorry, there's no dot operator in dot. Sorry, my bad. But if I want to maybe get this value here, maybe I want to get the name of sweet false, I need to place it under the square brackets and place the key here itself. Now what this do is it will print out sweet false. So I'm fetching the value using the key, which is name. Right. So now if I want to get only description, same thing, I copy description and I paste it here. So now this will print out, or this will fetch the description. Similarly with image source. If I want to get image source, I do image source. Right. Now, but then if you look here, if you look here, there's not only one location, there's 3 locations here. Right. So one is sweet false. This is description, this is the image. Another is mouse my cave. This is the description, this is the image. And the last is like Dome Canyon. So now what we can do is we can place this inside a list. Okay, a list of maps is what we call, or an array of objects if you're coming from JavaScript, it's called an array of objects. In Dart, it's called a list of maps. So right. So now let's create a list. So it's similar to this here, what we have here. If you look here, we have a list, right? Similarly to what we're doing is we're just creating a list. A list of what? A list of map string. This will be our data type, right? So inside our here we add our map string and string. So now here we can maybe give it like plural. Okay, like this is tourist spot because this is singular for only one spot. Now let's this and add S to it so that it's tourist spots. It's a list of tourist spots, a collection of tourist spots. Okay. So what does this mean is it just means a collection of maps. So a collection of tourist spots. Sorry, it doesn't start with a curly, it starts with, as you know, list starts with, it's enclosed in square brackets. Right. So this is a list. And now we can have our objects inside it. We can just copy this here and paste it here. Now what we have here is a list of tourist spots. And how many tourist spots are there inside this list? Right now there's only one tourist spot, right? So now let's add another tourist spot here. We'll just copy this object here, duplicate it, and paste it here. Now we'll go to the second location, which is mouse my cave. So again, copy that here. Let's copy the description. Kevin Sora. Kevin Sora. Here. Oops, sorry, copy put here. And the image source is this one here, Lightroom Canyon. I'll just replace the particular image here itself. Okay. So now we have again a collection of tourist spots. How many tourist spots are there in this list now? There's 2 locations. two tourist spots. Now, how do I access? Suppose I want to access only mouse my key here. So what do I do? So you know that lists, in order to get an element in a list, you need to use its index, right? So here we have the first index, which is 0, and we have 1. So now if we copy this variable here, which is your tourist spots, now how do we access an element? Again, inside our square brackets, we use the index 1. Now we've gotten here. Now we've gotten this particular object. Now I want to print out the description. Okay, let's just print out the name first. What I need to do is I need to, because I already have, I've already fetched this object here, I can use the key to fetch the name, right? So we place another square bracket and we, on the double quotes, we put the key. So now this will print out what? Mouse my if. Right, so same thing with description. If we copy description and paste it here itself, this will print out a TF in Sora. Now, if we change this to maybe index 0 and description here, it will print out this is a waterfall in the city of Meghalaya. Okay, so everyone's clear so far on collections and maps. Any questions? Okay, then. I guess everyone's familiar with it. So now let us see how are we going to convert this into our class instance system. How are we going to use this? Just remember, okay, that even the data coming from your API will be in this similar fashion, where we need to parse this entire list of objects into our objects and pass those objects around inside our app. So this format here, please be familiar with, because when we're going to start a networking session, we're going to revisit this format again. Okay, now let's copy the third location, which is our Lightroom Canyon. So copy this again, just duplicate this. You can see the pattern, right? You can see the patterns and differences between key and value. So keys, you can just use key to fetch the value. Lightroom Canyon. So let's copy Lightroom Canyon here, and then our description here. This here. Okay, oh, sorry. Small yet breathtaking here. Control C. And here itself. And assets, let's copy this Lightroom Canyon here. This place it over there. Oh no, wait. Oh, sorry. The image here, I've made a mistake. Sorry, mouse my KF here. This is mouse my KF. Copy and go. Okay. And close that. Yeah. So I guess now we have all our 3 locations. Now, if we run, let's try to make this code here work with what we have earlier here in our list view builder. So we'll be replacing that. Instead of using index, we'll be using the tourist spot itself here. Okay, so now before we do that, let's just use our list directly inside our list view builder. So let's just replace the code. Okay, let's just comment this out first here. Let's just comment this on tab function here a bit first. Okay, let me just add a few trailing commas here in order to make the code more readable. So now you can see that on tab here ends in materials, but yeah, it ends here. So on tab ends here. So it's quite neat. I use this trick here called call it brackets. So you can see that each bracket has a color, and each opening and closing bracket here has its own color. So you can easily make out when does it start, when does it end. This is also extension here you can install from VS Code extension called call it brackets. So for example, right now if I just hover over this, you can see that this is the closing bracket for untap, and I just comment it out. Okay. So now let's use this here, right? So now, okay, I think so. If you're using item builder here, you can see that it's iterating to the list, right? So now let's use this list. Let's use this tourist spots list here. Let's just delete this map. We don't need it anymore. That's only for reference. That's only when I was trying to show you what a map is. Let's delete that. So we have our list of tourist spots here. So as you have already, I think so you've already learned about this, that the list view builder, what it does is it goes through a list, right? It goes through this list, and using the index, you can grab an item or an element from the list itself. So what you're doing here is, yeah, exactly the correct way in what you're doing. You're using the index in order to fetch content from your different list variables. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use our tourist spots here. So let's go back to the code itself. So item count here, because we want to make it dynamic, right? Because right now, if we keep item count here 3, if I add another object to the code here, it will only render only these 3 here. Because we've hard coded as 3, let's make it a little bit more dynamic by using the length of this particular array. So this length of this array, right? That's so for now, I think so we already know that it contains 3, but what if it contains 4? We want the code to dynamically detect that. So let's add our field here, our value here called tourist spots. Sorry, tourist spots. We'll take the variable which is the array. So tourist spots dot length. Sorry, tourist spots dot length. Okay. That's the length, right? So now this here will give us 3, which is the length of this array. If we add another object here, if you add another location, that'll be 4. Okay, so now inside the item builder, what we can do is we'll go to our gesture listener here itself. Here in this image asset, let's just add here. Let's just get the data for, let's just get the map here itself. So here, let's just create a new value called maybe a map again. And a string, This will be the type of the, and this will be called tourist spot. Okay, tourist spot map equal to now tourist spots at index I. At index. So again, why is this having type? Why is this tourist spot map have a type of map string? The string is because tourist spots is an array of maps, right? So if we do index here, okay, let's start off with the first iteration, which is 0. We go here, we're fetching this object, right? So this essentially is a map of string and string. So we store that in this tourist spot map. Okay, so now how do we use this tourist spot map to render the same UI which we have here? So what we can do is here itself, we can just get rid of assets here, and we'll use tourist spot map, and we'll fetch using the key. Right, which key stores the image here? The key which stores the image is our image source key. So now we, how do we fetch values for a key? We use the square bracket, and inside double quotes, we give the name of the key. Right, okay. You can see here, because Dart right now it's null safe, so the argument type string can be assigned to a parameter type string. If you look at this question mark here, it means that this can return empty. Right, this can return a null value. So if it returns a null value and we are passing null to this widget here, it might throw an error, right? So that's why any value we pull from a key returns a string with this question mark here, which indicates that it might return either a string or a null value. So we know that it's always going to return a value, right? There's no null value here we've created, right? So now we need to tell Dart that it always contains a value. And for that, we just add an exclamation mark here. And that will make the Dart lint lifter happy. So this, again, this exclamation mark here means that whenever I fetch the value for this key image source, it will always return a value. It will not return null, because why? I've specifically given a value to image source key. It will always return me a value. There's no null values here. Okay. So now, now for title, we can use this same format here. But now, because it's asking for a name, we'll just change the key from image source to name. And same thing here. And this one will be description. Yeah, description. Okay, cool. So now you can see that this tourist spot information comes only from one particular map, right? So I know I think so it's, you're asking me why have I refactored all my code here from this type to this type when essentially it's almost the same format. Why are you already adding more complexity to the code? It's because when we use objects, we can just instead of passing like 3 or 4 parameters into the next page, we can just pass a tourist spot object, and all of that name, description, and image is embedded inside the instance object as well. So we don't need to pass 3 or 4 parameters to, we can just pass one object and everything's handled at one object. And so it makes the code more easier and more readable, and also there's less code. Okay, so now let's just render our app here and see that everything works fine because we've made a lot of changes. I hope nothing breaks. Okay, oh yeah, cool. So nothing breaks here. Yeah, apart from the part where I click here, it's not going to the next page. Is because I've commented out on tab. Okay, we'll get to that soon when we convert into an instance object. So now we can see that using a tourist map, we can fetch values in keys. Now let's convert this entire list into a class, into our tourist spot instance. So I don't think we'll need this anymore. So let's just remove that here. Yeah. We just primarily use this list here. Now let's create a list of tourist spots. Right. So for that, let's create a new variable called, the type will be list, and what will be a collection of? It'll be a collection of tourist spots. So tourist spots. So this tourist spots here, remember, it's coming from this class here inside the models class, which contains our name, description, image, source. Okay. So now it's a list of tourist spots. Now let's just give the name spots maybe. Yeah, so equal to, these are spots. Now what I need to do is I need to take each and every one of these maps here and convert it to a tourist spot object, right? How do I do that? How do I take this map here and convert it to a tourist spot object or instance? So what we could do is we could iterate through this list here through using a for loop. Okay, that's one way we could do it. We could iterate using a map function, but in order for like simplicity's sake, let's use the for loop for this. Okay, so now spots, right? So let's just initialize an empty array for this now. Okay, wait, okay, sorry. Can you find const field? Okay, let's just remove that const. Let's just remove const here for the time being for the constructor here for our list of tourist spots. Let's just define our spots here with an empty array. Now inside our init state, what we need to do is we need to iterate through this over this entire list, right? So we can do is we can create a for loop here, for, and maybe have it in here equal to 0. So this will be our index. Sorry, I will be our index, and I should be less than our tourist spots length, and then I right. So now I is our index. It should be less than tourist spots at length. It should be less than this. So essentially, it'll be less than 3 because our index always starts at 0. So it'll be less than 3. It'll go from 0. So it'll go from 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so now we have that. Now what we need to do is we need to extract again our map here called map and a string. So type for the key, type for the value. So let's just call it maybe again tourist spot, like singular. Sorry. And then equal to, now this tourist spot, again, we need to go in a similar fashion. It's almost, yeah, let's just copy paste this code here because it's the same thing which we're doing, fetch it from the index itself. So index, instead of index, we just use I. Yeah, no. Okay. Now it's fetching from the tourist spot list. And now let's convert this into an actual object. So let's convert this to a tourist spot, and then we have our tourist spot map, and here let's just give it tourist spot object. So we give equal to tourist spot. Now we pass in the name and value, right? So now we can use tourist spot map name. So we need to fetch the name by the key. So we're using the name key. Again, we have the exclamation mark here because like again, remember that if we don't use the exclamation mark here, it's saying that what if it returns a null? What if the value is null? Okay, so we'll use exclamation mark here because we know that definitely it's not null. So tourist spot, and then tourist spot name. Then this will be the description, and this will be our tourist spot image source. Now let's add here one more trailing comma so that it can, yeah, so you can format the code a little bit better so we can easily make out. So now let's recap again. So what is this doing? This is a tourist spot object of type tourist spot. It's creating a new tourist spot with all these arguments here passed to the constructor. So now if we, okay, if we console, if we print this here, if we print the tourist spot object, what we're going to see is, okay, let's go to our debug console and let's, sorry, let's just run our app. Oops, sorry, why is not printing? Oh, sorry, I mean output. Yeah, we run again. Wait, okay, sorry. Why is this here? Okay, oh, sorry, main dot. There was an issue with main dot here. This isn't constructor. Try removing cons from the constructor invocation. Okay, because I've removed the cons keyword here, let's just remove the cons constructor keyword from the column itself. Okay, now let's rerun the code again. Okay, debug console. Now, yeah, now you can see that it's an instance of tourist spot, right? So now we have actually gotten a tourist spot object. Now, if we do .name here and I restart the app, you can see here it's printing out Sweet Falls, Mouse My Cave, and Lightdome Canyon, right? Because I'm using the .name. Okay, so now we have our tourist spot object. Now, how do we add it to this list here? How do we add to this list of spots here? Right, because right now it's just one tourist spot object. I need to put it inside a list. I need this to become a list of tourist spot objects. So in order to do that, what we could do is we could use the add function here. Oh, sorry, array spots here, and oh, sorry. Okay. Actually, we need to add this to the, we need to append this to the list. We need to append this object here to this list. So let's try it again. Spots. That, okay, why is that? Why is not? Oh, I'm so sorry. I added this inside the, I'm so sorry, I added this outside here inside this particular class, where I should have added this inside the state class. We just got that by mistake. So just paste that here. Now we have access to the spots. So spots dot add here. What we can add is our tourist spot object. Tourist spot object. Okay, so now, okay, let's reiterate through the code. What is this code doing? It's, so this for loop here is going through this entire list. Let me just put this here. It's going through this entire list. Right? It's iterating to each and every one of these objects. Now, this second line here, what it's doing is, because index is 0 initially, so index of 0, tourist spot 0, it fetches this map here and stores it here inside the tourist spot map. Now, I need to create tourist spot object. Okay, so what I did was I created a new tourist spot object by using tourist spot constructor, and I passed these values here. Where am I getting these values here? I'm getting from the tourist spot map, right? So name here, for instance, so tourist spot map name is Sweet Falls. Then description is, this is waterfall in the city of Meghalaya, and along the image source here, Sweet Falls will be. Now, next, after I've gotten this object here, I need to add it to this list of tourist spots array here. So I use the add method provided by the spots here. So this is called an array method here. It's provided for you automatically out of the box if you're initializing any array. So add to it. So it keeps adding to it. It's like it's like an empty basket initially, and then you keep adding things inside your basket. So this is what add function does. Now our list of tourist spots has been populated. Now if we take a look here and we maybe print out the length of our spots, that length, right? Now let's just rerun our app again. We can see that's printing out 3. So now spots has 3 elements inside it. And now how are we going to use this inside our code again? It's almost similar to how we're using map, but now we're going to use an object here. Now, how do we extract an object here? So let's just remove this code here. We don't need that anymore because we're not going to use map anymore. We're going to use an object. So we knew that it's going to return as a tourist spot, right? Okay, because we knew that, again, let's go back, because this tourist spot object is type tourist spot. So we know it's going to return that. So again, let's just copy this code here. The name of the object will be tourist spot object equal to, now we can fetch it from a list of our spots here. Yeah. So let's just use this array here to get our tourist spot object. So spots. So here in this line here, and now I'm going to use index. Right. So now go through inside our spots array, fetch a tourist spot object and store it inside this tourist spot object. Now instead of using map here, we're going to use our tourist spot object. And we're going to use the dot operator and name. And similarly here in this code, we're going to use the same thing. Name, and this is going to be description. Sorry. Description. And here's going to be image source. Sorry. So Akshat. Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah. Okay, so this should be an image again. So my bad. So yeah. So let's image source, and then this is a name, and then this is our description. Okay. Now it's showing us unable to load. So it's giving us an error here saying unable to load asset mouse my cave. Okay, let's see what the problem is. Okay, let's look here how we created image source, right? So source map image source. If you take a look here, if we hover over our constructor, we can see that the first parameter is name, description, and third is image source, right? So we provide image source. Okay, that's correct. Here, mouse my cave JPEG, that's correct. Lightroom Canyon, that's correct. Here, let's just render app again. Let's see if it renders or not. Okay, so it's rendering and there's no errors. Yeah, has been rectified. Yeah, my bad. So I guess that was just previous errors. So okay, so cool. Now we have our code here, which is completed in this section here. Let's recap. So what we did was we created here a list of maps. Okay, as I said before, why is this important? Is because whenever we fetch data from an API, it will be in this similar fashion or this similar format. So what we need to do is we need to convert this into our class objects. So for that, in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to iterate over the list of maps and create an object from each map value. So how do we get a map value? How do we get values from a map? By using the keys description. And how do we add, after that, how do we add those objects? We add those objects using the spots.add or your array.add method, which will add to your array, which will add your objects to the array. And yeah, so similarly, yeah. So here in this view builder, so what we're accessing now is we're actually accessing objects now. We're not accessing strings, we're not accessing maps anymore, we're accessing objects. Now let's just pass our object to the next screen. Right, so now if I click on this screen here, it should go to spot details. So let's just configure that a little bit. So let's just bring this back to life here. Let's bring our untap function back to life. Now we can see that it's showing us errors because we are not using the names, because we've removed the array variables containing names, short description, and spot image. So in order to refactor this code, what we need to do is we need to first go to spot details and make it ready for it to receive the tourist spot object. Right, so now what's receiving is it's receiving three arguments, right? One is spot name, spot description, and a spot image. All of these are type string. So let's just remove this and let's just add our object here to tourist spot, and then our tourist object. It's not necessary for you to give object here, but because we're just starting out, in order to avoid confusion, let's just give this field as object name here. Now spot. So you can see that's throwing error because why? This required field and this dot spot name here, it points to a class field, but we've removed that. So let's just also remove that as well. So now let's accept a tourist spot object here. So this dot tourist spot object. Right, so constructor for public should have a name. Okay, what's this warning here? Should have a name key parameter. Constructors for public widgets. Okay, let's just add a key as well. Okay, we want to super key. Okay. Use super. Okay. Oh, sorry. We have to use like okay, let's just ignore this key error for a bit because I don't want to use name parameters here as yet because name parameters are just going to cause some confusion. Yeah, let's just ignore that and use these parameter arguments for now. Let's just ignore that warning. It'll still work without a key value. So now our spot details, what it takes is it takes a tourist spot object. Right, so now let's configure our code here again to use that tourist spot. So now we're still using strings here. Okay, let's remove that here. It's going to be the same formula, the same format as we use it for the list view builder. So tourist spot object dot image source. And now spot name is tourist spot dot name. Oh, sorry, in class here. Tourist spot object dot name and tourist spot object dot description. Good. So now let's go back to our code here in the tourist spot. In the tourist spot details. Now let's just remove our code here and we'll just pass. So what we need to do is now we can see that our spot details takes what if we hover over here. Let's just remove here. Use const with the constructor to improve performance. Okay. It's throwing an error here. You can see it's saying one positional argument expected by spot details. So let's go back here to spot details. If you look at the constructor, it needs one argument, which is a tourist spot object. So here we need to pass our tourist spot object. And where will this tourist spot object come from? It comes from this part here, which we've extracted from the spots array. So let's just pass that here and there. Okay. Now let's run our code and hopefully it works. Okay, so now let's go to Lightroom Canyon and click on it. Yeah, we can see that our app works as expected as before, but the only difference is now we are passing an object. If you look at the code, it's more concise, right? So now we're just passing just one instance of a class here. We just pass this object and it's just one argument. It's just one constructor argument. You go here and this constructor argument here, it's stored in this particular class field here, and we can access it by using the class fields, by using .annotate, the dot operator, and we can have autocomplete on all the fields inside the class. Okay, I guess any questions regarding this? I know I haven't started the animations yet, but using class is quite important, so I just wanted to emphasize on that. Okay, so I guess I've exceeded my 1 hour quota there, Krishan. Shall we continue animations in the next session?
Go ahead whenever. It is nice session.
Oh, nice. Okay. Okay, then I guess if you're not too bored or shall I keep going?
No, it is. Go ahead. It's nice.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, Prakash. Okay then. So yeah. So now we've gotten our code here. Let's recap what we've done so far. Is we've introduce like like the official not official, I mean like conventional folder structure for our files and components here inside our app. We've What we've done was we've removed all uh, references to arrays and to maps and to strings, and we use objects instead, which makes the code more concise and which makes the code more maintainable and scalable. Because if you took a look at it, we can just pass this store object anywhere in our code, right? And we can easily get access to that data. It becomes our code now becomes easily maintainable and scalable, and it also becomes easily maintainable. Like you don't have a lot of parameters going on in your constructors. So yeah, essentially, I'm not trying to overcomplicate things here because these things take time. As the more you code, the more you'll start to see the benefits of using classes, of like a good folder structure. So I think so right now. Oh, I think so. This is more of like an overview. Like hopefully you'll get it once you start coding bigger and bigger projects. Okay, so now let's move on to animations then. I guess I've used up most of my 1 hour talking about objects. So in order for animations, the most important thing about animations is first off, you need to ask yourself, like, does your app need animations? If it's just a regular e-commerce app, I don't think so. It needs so much complex animations. But if you're trying to stand out from the competition, or if you're trying to make your UI and UX more modernized, more with the trying to keep up with the current UI trends, animations play a very big role. Yes, I said earlier that Flutter was built with animations in mind. Okay? Because going forward, generic apps will seem boring because we as humans, the first thing we look at are the superficial stuff, right? How does an app look? Does it look good? What are the colors? So those are things which usually tracks consumers' attention. So if we can try to make our apps look lively, and if we can try to add like more animations and make the app pop up on first impressions, then it has a high chance of getting more users. Yeah. So I'm not saying like every app should have animations, but certain apps, maybe certain styles which you have in mind, you can also include animations. So now let's try to convert this animation. Let's just convert first this first page here into a kind of list view animation, whereby if you are if you are scrolling and I want to add animation on the image which is in the active phase, okay, image which is in the active card will be animated. Okay, so now let's in order to do that, let's go to the tourist spot. Because now you can see, right, it's quite easy now. Now I know exactly where I need to modify the code. So I don't need to go to models because I need to modify the pages, right? So I go to pages and I go to tourist spots pages. So it's already there. All the code is there. So now let's, instead of using view builder, what we're going to use is we're going to use a page view builder. Okay. So let me just comment out this code here. I'll show you how a page view builder looks like. Okay, here. Okay. Let's just create another function called same thing. Let me just copy this. Okay. Build context. Okay. I'll also show you if your code gets too big, okay? Because when you're starting to design for your UI, there's going to be a lot of styles and a lot of variables going on and a lot of style changes. So your code tends to get a little bit longer. And with Flutter, it has a tendency of having this notorious of your code being like horrendously nested. So I will show you how to extract your code into either widgets or functions so that your code can easily be maintainable. So now for our widget build function, it needs to return a widget, right? So here, what does this widget here mean? It means it returns a widget. So as you know that in Flutter, everything's a widget, right? So there's a big meme going around that everything in Flutter is a widget. So if I return a container, that's a widget. If I return text, that is a widget. If I return a scaffold, that is also a widget, right? So now let's just return maybe a container for now. Yeah, container. Yeah, container. Sorry, wrong spelling. My bad. Now you can see that's returning widget. Build is the name of the function, and this function takes a build context. Build context, I won't go into detail right now. I'm going to go a little bit later when we're using media queries for that. So context also plays a very big important role. So now inside our container, obviously we can add a child here, and for that let's just use a page view builder. Okay, let's just use a page view for that matter, not a builder. So I guess you're quite familiar between the difference between a list view and a list view builder, right? So a list view, if you're just using an ordinary list view, if you have like a large list, it becomes pretty inefficient because it's rendering all of that, even all those styles which are outside the viewport of the screen, for example, like this part here. So if you look at here, if I scroll upwards, the sweet falls here, it's outside the viewport of the app, right? So if you're just using list view, that keeps on rendering in the GPU, right? So it still holds on to this object in the memory. But if you're using list view builder, as soon as I scroll this list upwards and sweet falls disappears into the app background, it removes that from the GPU itself. It doesn't render this. It keeps a hold of the data inside the memory, but it doesn't render them GPU. So it becomes quite performant. So builders are quite performant if you have a large list. So same thing with page view. Because this is almost like a list, you also have access to the builder. Right. But for now, I just want to show you what's the difference between a page view and a list view. So I'll just have children here, same thing like a page view. We just add a container here. Container, and maybe I'll give the color red here. This one's red. Sorry, not just red. Yeah, I have to use the colors, the red colors here. And maybe we'll add, okay, just add 3 containers here. This one and this one. So red, and then this will be blue, and this is green. Okay, to spot details, yeah. Okay, now if I re-render the app, you can see that it's rendering these containers here. Right, as you can see now, page view doesn't render a list, it renders the entire page, so it takes up the entire viewport of your screen. So if I scroll to the next page is blue container, if I scroll to the next page is green container. Right, we can also change the scroll behavior. We can have it scroll, right now it's scrolling from left to right, we can have it scroll from top to bottom using the scroll direction here. And this takes the axis, and then we can either give it horizontal or vertical. So I think so right now it's horizontal. If you get vertical, app render again. Okay, let me just render the app again. Yeah, now I'm not able to scroll from left to right, but top to bottom, right? Yeah, so okay. Now, what we can also do is we can also change the viewport. So I'll show you with an actual example now. Now we need to convert this. We need to use so instead of using the list view, we'll be using our page view builder here. Okay, so let's just remove this code here. And now let's just uncomment this code again. Hello again. So let's just rename this using page view builder. Page view. Let's rename it. Don't need to remove the entire thing because page view and list view takes almost a similar attributes. For example, item count, item builder, that's similar. Now, if we re-render our app, let's look at how it look. Let's go back here. You can see that now the app is taking on. It's taking the entire viewport because I said earlier list render items as lists, right? So those are smaller components, but a page view renders that an entire page according to the height and width of the phone's viewport. So now we have the scroll view. We have the horizontal scrolling in place, which is what we want. Now I want to make this image full screen, right? I want this to take up the entire viewport of the screen itself. Okay, so now what we can do is because we have the container right here, let's just remove this. Okay, we don't need this anymore because we'll be creating our own. So again, see, your code with Flutter, this problem where sometimes you don't know where your code starts and where it ends, right? So what you could do is you can have either the package I asked earlier, where we have these called brackets, and if you highlight over a particular bracket, you can see that it ends here. Or you could follow these comments here, which have been added by the Dart linter, Flutter linter itself. So this container ends here, so I'll just remove that here itself. Okay. So now before we do that, what I want is let's just plan ahead first, okay? Because I don't want to code directly that because that's not the way of doing things. So before we code, we always plan. So what I want my image to be is I want this image to be like full scale, it takes the entire viewport phone, and I want this text to be on top of the image itself. So what we need for that, a column will not work, a row will not work so we need a stack. So what a stack does, you can stack different layers on top of each other. So the bottom layer will be the image and the top layer will be your text here. So let's just return a stack here then for that. So stack, and a stack is similar to a column. whereby it takes children. So children, and let's add here. Okay, so now we have our children here. So now what we can do is we can add our image. So let's add the first background, which is our image dot asset. Because we're pulling images from assets, that's why I'm using the dot asset. If we need to pull images from network, which we're going to showcase soon in the network session, we use the network. And here we pass a URL, an actual URL. Yeah. So let's go get asset. So now we can use the storage spot again. We already know the image source. So yeah. So now you can see again the convenience of having an object, image source, already here in our complete image source. Okay. Now let's just run the code. Let's see, is it full screen or not? Okay, in front of code, but you can see that it takes the original size. It takes this. It doesn't expand. Why is this? I think so. Okay, let's just maybe add a fit parameter or fit attribute to the image, right? Fit, and we have box fit, and then cover. So if you look here, what it does is it contains within the viewport. If cover, it takes the entire viewport. If you look at the example given here, so let's add cover here. Hopefully it'll take up the width. Still doesn't take the entire viewport. Why is that? That is because stack here, okay, stack takes the size of your children. So because your image here has this exact size, the stack here takes the size of the child. So the size of the stack is only equal to the size of the child. Now, in order to make this image expand and take up the entire viewport of your app, you need to add another attribute to stack itself. You need to tell it to, hey stack, take up the entire viewport of the parent of the phone. Don't take up the size of the child, take up the size of your parent. So the parent is actually your entire phone scaffold here, right? That's your parent. So let's tell it. So if you look at fit here, there's a attribute here called stack fit expand. Now if I reload, now you can see that image takes on the entire viewport, right? So again, this stack fit expands. Tell stack fit to take the size, the height and width of the parent, which is scaffold. Don't take the size of the children. Okay, so now we have this image here. Okay, cool. Now still okay. Okay, if I scroll, okay, it looks a little bit better. But now I want this image to be I want it to be a little bit smaller so that this second image here can maybe overflow a bit to the right side or to the left side. Yeah, so that you know so that you know that there's another image just behind it. Just some good UI UX, something that. So if we have the image over here, we know that there's another image on the left, so we can scroll it. Another image on the left, on the right, we can then scroll it to the next. So how do we do that? So what we can do is we can add a controller to our page view. We can set the viewport. So in order to do that, we cannot add the viewport directly inside the page view itself. It needs to be added through a controller, right? So controller essentially is almost like, what do you call controller? Controller is an extension of the page view builder itself. Okay, a controller, you can add listener to it so that, for example, if I swipe images here, I can automatically listen and get the index of the image which is active. So example, if image right now index is 0, it's active. If I swipe here, I get 1. If I swipe, it's 2. So I can listen to that value using controller. Okay, so for that, yeah, I'll be showing you later on. For now, let's just focus first on using the viewport. Okay, so in order to do that, what I need to do is I need to instantiate, or I need to initialize a page controller object. So for that, I click on page controller. That's a type of page controller, and I create a page controller variable. I'm using this underscore here because this means private. Okay, this page controller I'm going to use only inside this class. I'm not going to send it to other class. I'm not going to use it outside beyond this class. So I'm just using that underscore to just like a visual element to notify you that this is a private variable. So let's just initialize this page controller here, page controller. And inside your page controller here, you can see that if I hover, it takes a viewport fraction as a parameter. Okay, and this one is a name parameter. Anything which is inside your curly brackets is a name parameter. So what name parameter you can do is you can give the name viewport fraction here, and because you can look at the type of view fraction parameter as well. So this takes a double itself. So double takes, okay, let's just maybe give it around 0.5, and then I place it there. Yeah. So again, I've initialized a page controller along with the viewport function at 0.5. So what will this do? Now, how will this page controller actually modify the page view builder? For that, we need to add it to the controller. So the page view builder has controller attribute, and we add this page controller to the view builder. So now let's just run it up. Okay, we can see that's small, right? So okay, it's coming along. We can see, so viewport, what it does is viewport 0.5 is it takes the entire screen. Now 0.5 takes half the screen, right? So this one, if you look here, this is almost like half. If you look here, right? So the first image is 50% of the width. So viewport gives that. So now if I, because it's a little bit small, okay, let's make it around 8, 0.8. So this says, this tells the page builder to make the image 80% of the phone's viewport. Okay, so now it's 80%, right? As you can see here, if I do this, you can see that this gap here, it's around 20%. So this image is 80% of the viewport. And now you can see that the right image overflows a little bit. So it gives you this, yeah, it gives you this good feel, gives you this good indicator that there are other images to the right. Cool. Now, these images are stuck to each other, which doesn't look good. Let's add a few, let's add padding in between these images. So there's some space in between them. So in order to do that, let me just look at my notes, sorry, a little bit. Let me see, I've covered most of the things. Okay, behavior controller. Okay, spot details. Okay, access control, horizontal length. Okay, I've covered most of that. Now let's add here. Okay, location animated. So now again, let's go back. So I've covered the page viewer controller. Okay, everything. So now let's add padding so that there's space in and around our images. So there's a little bit of space because, as I said earlier, these images sticking together doesn't look really good. So let's add an padding here inside the image itself, or we can add it on top of the container and the stack. So what we could do is we could add our container. We can add another container here inside the inside the stack here. We can add another container. So in order to add another widget on top of the stack, we just click on here, click on this light bulb, and wrap it with a widget. So now let's just name this container. Now in the container we have padding. So let's just add padding edge insets, and then let's edge insets and that all. So this will give a padding of 2020 on all the sides, right? From left, right, top, bottom sides. Okay, now you can see that there's a little bit of space here. Okay, it's looking pretty good. I think so 2020 is a lot. Maybe let's just add around, I know, maybe around 10. Okay, 10, okay. Okay, let's just go back to 20 then. No, okay. Let's not use all because it's adding padding here, it's adding padding to the left, to the right, to the bottom, to the top. Let's just add specifically. Let's just add it maybe around right side at 20. Okay, in order to do that, I need to use edge insets dot only. All will apply to all, only you can choose whether it's right or top or bottom. Okay, let's just add it only to the right, maybe around 20. Why is not here? Okay, 20. Okay, 20. Yeah, 20 is 20 looks a little bit okay, better. Okay, let's just leave it right side 20. Now let's add to the top because see top and bottom. Let's add like a few spacing here. Maybe top's around maybe around 50, and then okay, top's around 30, and then bottom is around 50. See, it looks okay. Yeah, now there's ample space. Okay, now the pictures look like they have space to breathe. Otherwise, it looks so claustrophobic, so congested. Okay, it's looking almost pretty good. Okay, maybe top I want it around 100. I want the photos to be a little bit. Oh, sorry, so that's right. Around 100. Okay, good. Now they look pretty good. Okay, now let's add a little bit of Now let's add animations to this. If I scroll to the active image, this should scale up. Yeah. Now if I go back, this should scale down, and this other image should scale up. Okay, this should animate in a way. In order to do that, let's first detect which image is active or not. Okay, so I need to know if this image is active or this image or this image is active. So in order to do that, let's use the controller again. So let's use the controller inside the init state here itself. So remember we initialized the page controller earlier. So page controller, and then we add listener. And inside your listener here, what you could do is inside your listener, what you could do is yeah. So you could let's just print out first. Okay, let's just print out print. Let's just print whatever value we get here. So add listener, print, and then maybe page listener, page controller dot page. Okay. So what is this add listener here? So because earlier we've added the controller to the page view builder, right? So now page view builder has access to the page controller through this controller attribute. And now every time I scroll this page here, oh, why is it disappearing? So every time I scroll this page here, it will call this listener here. So it will call this function here itself. Again, every time I scroll the page, it will call this listener and print this page control. Now let's look at the controller itself here. So you can see here it's printing, right? If I scroll, see it's printing from 9, there, 1. So now it's 0, this image 0, and then this is 1, and then this is 2. Right, so now you can see that I'm getting decimal values. I don't want that, so let's just round off this value. So just round off. Let's remove all those decimal places and round that value off. So that, okay, round that value. This method round can be unconditionally invoked because the receiver can be null. Okay, so here we run to another dot null safety check. Actually, it's pretty good because it makes your code more safe. So it's what is this saying is this page here could return null value. And we cannot round a null value, right? How do we round something which is empty? How do we round nothing? So in order to do that, we need to use null checking. So let's just use this question mark here. Right, so what it's saying is, if this is empty, do not run this function. Okay, if page returns null, do not run this function. So your code won't crash in that matter. Otherwise, if you do this, if page is empty, if you run around, it'll crash your entire code base. It'll crash your app. Okay, so let's add it again. Again, so this means that if your page is empty or null, do not run this function. Just ignore it. Okay, now let's run this function again. Okay, let me just play the console. And now if we run this, okay, let me just refresh that a bit, sorry. Okay, now let's run it. Now you see, now you're getting like whole numbers. Yeah, so 1, 2, 0. Now we have the index. Okay, so now we have the index of an active page. Now what do we do next? Now we need to add animations to the active page. So in order to do that, let's use an animated container for that. Okay, so an animated container, I'll just show you the animated container. Okay, what we can do is an animated container, and this we have our okay, padding, right? Okay, sorry guys, let me just go back to my notes and see if I've covered everything. Padded container, description, and the text. Okay, description container. Okay, let's cover most of that. Checklist is off. Description container. Okay, cool. So now, okay, let's access our using our animate container. So an animate container, I think so. Let us go back to let's go back to what it does, right? Okay, let's add a simple animate container widget here. So show you from scratch. Let me just comment this out again. Okay, let me just comment this out again. And let's create another widget build. So this one, widget build. And then here, and then it returns a animated container. Sorry, animated container. Here we have duration. And yeah. Okay, now first let's just add a child. Let's just add maybe another container itself. I know it's a bit nested, but I'll just add a container here itself, and then I'll just give the color as red. There's the red. Okay, there's the red. Let's just add padding here. Padding action sets that top and bottom. Okay, only. So this will give top, and this will give 100, and this will give bottom. So there's a padding of 100 for both top and bottom. It's animated container. Now it's throwing an error. The name parameter duration is required. Because it's an animated container, it needs a duration. Okay, what is this duration? Duration is the time in which this container takes to complete an animation. Okay, again, what is duration? The time it takes to complete an animation. So it takes duration, takes duration class, and then let's just give it milliseconds, maybe around 500 milliseconds. Okay. Seconds. Okay. Right. So now let's run the app. Now we have our container here itself. Okay. So now if you look here, okay, this is very interesting. If I change this top value here from 100 to maybe 200, you can see it animates, right? It goes down. So if I go back to maybe, okay, let's make it slower then. Let's make it maybe around 1,000 milliseconds. That's around 1 second. If I change this back to 100, it slowly animates upward, right? So what is it doing is it's animating between the start and the end value. So right now the start value is 100, right? If I give it again 200, it takes 1 second to animate from 100 to 200. Okay. So okay, I know this. I know if it's confusing or not, but are you able to understand, guys, or is it confusing?
For me, it's fine.
Okay, it's fine. Okay, okay. Thanks, Guys. What about the others? Is it confusing? Because this is very important here. Moving onwards, how an animate container works is quite important. So I guess everyone has understood it. I guess maybe just give an emoji. Maybe give like a I don't know, maybe like a thumbs up emoji if you understand. Okay, cool, guys. Thanks. Cool. Okay, so okay, let's talk in emojis then going forward. So yeah, again, so you can see the value changes, right? So bottom, same thing with bottom. So now what if I change both bottom and the top? Okay, let's go back to the initial value. Right, so 100 and 100. Let's change this maybe to maybe 400 and this to maybe 300. So it animates. Okay, cool. So now you can see that the animation is pretty linear, right? Let's just add a little bit of more flair to it by using interpolation. So this is another way in which you can spice up animation using curves. Okay, so curve. Okay, let's add maybe curve dot curves. Actually, it's curves dot bounce in, bounce in, bounce out. Okay, let's do this one. Bounce in, bounce out, and let's give it maybe at 500 seconds. Let's go back to maybe 100 and 100. What this interpolation will do is, you see it bounce a little bit. It bounce. Go back here. So again, you can see that it staggers, right? The animation is not so smooth, but if I go to this website here, you can see how it works. Let me just show you. This is a really good website where you can see what animations actually, what the curves actually do. So if you look at here, it bounce in, you can see at scale. If you're scaling, your animation will go like this. So it'll see, yeah. If you're moving it up and down, it's like that. This is a little bit of bounce in, and if you're using bounce in, bounce out, yeah. If you're using decelerate, yeah, your scale initially starts off first at a very high speed and then it slows down. I guess the frame rate is not so good. I just paste this link here on the Google chat because I think so Google Meets doesn't render at 60 FPS, so this website doesn't do much justice. But take a look at it, because by using interpolation, you can add a lot of like emotions to your animations, even physics based as well. You can add a lot of physics-based animations, emotions. You can make your app animations stand out. And for my animations, I always use interpolation curves for that matter. Okay, so yeah, so I guess let's just leave it at that. I'm going to add another interpolation curve to my animation, but I guess this is the fundamentals of using animated container. So this is called implicit animation, whereby all the animation is being handled by an animated container, which is provided by Flutter out of the box, implicit animations. So it becomes quite easy to use animation. You can even have like an animated position widget, which we're going to use later, where we can move objects maybe from left to right, top to bottom. Yeah, so that's where you can actually move. You can also have like, you even have an animated scale. I've showed earlier, we can just scale a container from maybe scale 0 to maybe zoom in, zoom out, an animated fade in, fade out widget also. We can change the opacity of the value from hidden to visible. visible to hidden, you can also animate that value. Yeah, so there's lots of these widgets here. You can take a look at all these widgets. They have the animated keyword in front of them. Animated. Okay, cool. So now, yeah, let's bring this back to life. Now what I want to do is I want to animate the top padding for this particular animation. I'm just running. Oh, sorry. What is this? The name parameter? Duration. Yeah. Okay, duration here. The duration. Let's just add duration of again milliseconds. Milliseconds. Let's add 500 milliseconds again. Cool. Now we have this right. Now I want to animate the top. Okay. So if this image here is active, the padding here will increase. The padding will decrease so that the image scales. So we'll reduce the padding here on top, right? So in order to do that, what we need to do is we first need to create a variable in order to house our padding. So that's why that's why we converted our stateless into a state. Okay, so okay, let me just do that again. Okay, file build top. Okay, so let's just create here final value here called final top padding. Okay, equal to 100. Okay, so let's just paste this top padding here, and maybe yeah, let's use that here, top here. Top padding, use const for final value. Okay, what's the problem here? Just see here. Type in cannot be assigned to a parameter type double. Oh, sorry, it's a double. So let's just add a double here. POUBLE. Like, okay, now it's okay. Use const to construct it with performance. Okay, let's just add a const to duration. Why I'm using const? Because it's this value here is hard coded, so I can use const. Otherwise, if this value here is coming from a variable, right, I cannot use const because that value might change later on. So if it's a hard coded value like 500, you can use const here. Okay, so what const here does is it adds a bit of performance boost to your app because if your app re-renders, it doesn't need to create this duration from scratch. I think so you can read about it. There's good articles on that, on how const can add to the performance of your Flutter app. Okay, so now let's go back here to Flutter, final double padding top padding. Okay, now we have the value here. Now if I add this, if I change this value to 200, you can see that it animates. I think so you can see the effect if I change by 100. Okay, that's it. Now how do now you can see that it's adding that animation to all of the images, but I want to add only for actives. Now, how do we do that? Let's add this here value. Now we create another field here called, we add another global variable here called final, not final, because it needs to change, right? If I add here final and I add maybe is active. No, I don't need its active value. Sorry. I don't need a variable as active here. What I need to do is okay. Need to check. Okay, is active top 100. Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. Actually, check my notes here. Okay. For simplicity's sake, let's just add first this is value here. Okay, this one here. So now we have. Okay, for that we just need to store an active page here, current page. So this one will be an integer, current page equal to 0. Right, so this current page is equal to 0, and we need to assign it here if we are setting the state. So now let's add the current page equal to, again, page controller, then that page, again here, and that round. And now it throws another error here. So we've already tackled that error right before, saying that if page is null, do not round it. But now it's throwing an error called, and now it's seeing another error called integer of type in question mark cannot be assigned to a variable of type in. Why is that? This is because here, so this function round returns an integer or a null value. So again, we've encountered another similar problem. This round will round an integer, but it might also return a null value. So in order to do that, we can use this check here and give it 0. So what it does is it check if this entire expression or if this entire logic here returns null, then you assign 0 to current page. Otherwise, if it doesn't return null, then you give whatever values return here and assign it to current page. Right, so this essentially just means just check for if it's null. If it's null, if this left-hand side is null, then you assign right-hand side. Okay, cool. So now current page controller, page, okay. Cool. Now we have the current page. Now the current page, we've stored index and current page. Now we need to check if it's active or not. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to go to this index here, in this index here. So check here. If a const is active, not const, sorry. Let's give boolean. Boolean is active. If current page is equal to index. Oh, sorry, bool. In JavaScript it's boolean, but in that it's just bool. Just short form, yeah. So now we have it. So if the current page is equal to index, that means it's active. Right. Okay. Let me just check again. Is that correct? If double is active, index equal to 100. Double top. Okay. Active. Active. Okay. Actives come from there. First part index, yeah, active. Okay, active is equal index equals here. Now if this current page here, okay, is it equal not to the index or not? Here, if it's equal to index, then this as active here will be true, right? So for example, this is active now, so this is true. But then if I go here, the previous image will be active is false. This will be true, and this will be this will be false. False, true, and then false. Okay, so now how do we pass that here? So in order to do that, what we need to do is final double padding. Let's just move that here. Let's just see if we can do it here. We just place it here at the bottom, and then we just check if it's active. I'm just going to use a ternary operator here. If active is true, then then if active is true, then we change it to maybe 100. Okay, otherwise it's 200. Okay, let me just see if this works or not. Oh, no. Okay, let's see why is that here. Okay, it's not changing. Oh, yeah. You see why it's not changing here? It's because we're not using. No, there shouldn't be set state here, actually. Current page. There should be set state. No. Is it because of set state? No, actually should change. Made a mistake here, but let me just check the code. If control page, current page here stores here, then it changes every time. Every time you change the code, it changes. There's spots. Yeah, I think so. We need to set state. Oh, we need to set state. Yeah, I forgot set state. Why do we need to set state? So that we can re-render the UI again with the new change value. My bad. That was the most important part. I think someone has explained to you quite well in this concept. Yeah, set stage and yeah. Okay, let's try. Yeah, now I think so it's working. But for the image, it's not working for the other images. Why is that? Oh, now it's working. Yeah, see, now it's working. It's working. Okay. Okay, cool. It's animating. Now you can see it's pretty linear. Okay, let me just go back and explain to you the logic behind this. Okay, so again, as I said earlier, every time I scroll on this animate and on this stack here on this page view builder, the page controller fires. It calls this controller every time. So if I call this, if I scroll to the left, it will give me the index of the current page. So now the current page right now is 0. It sets the state, right? So what happens when it sets state is it renders the entire logic again. It renders this build function again. Set state renders this build function again. So now here we're coming here to this store spot we're getting by index. Now it's setting it. So this one is it's calling again. It's calling again index 0. This is index. So this one here is index 0. Is index 0 equal to current page? Because current page is actually 0, right? So now this becomes true. And now it comes here. If this is true, then it gives 100. Padding is 100, right? So because padding is less now, this will go up. But if it's inactive, it's 200. So that means there's more padding. So that means it's compressing the image. But this one is not compressing the image, it's 100. So the image will scale up a bit like this. Okay. So does everyone get the logic? Any thumbs up, thumbs down? Or do I need to explain it again? Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Cool. Anyone? Any thumbs down if you want me to explain again? Okay, cool. So I guess everyone has understood the logic, right? So now you can see that this image, this animation here, it's a little bit boring. I think so. I think so. And the app itself, it's not rendering 60K. So let's add a curve animation to it. think so. If you get access to the code, you can experiment by yourself on how the different interpretation works. So you can add maybe here like bounce in, bounce out, decelerate, all of this all together. So what I want is I want an ease in quint, ease in out quint, ease out quint, ease out quint. After experimenting with all of these interpretations, I found that ease quint has a very pleasing interpolation curve to it, a very pleasing effect. Yeah, once you get access to the GitHub code, yeah, you can just take a look by yourself and experiment. So yeah, so I guess that ends the phase one of this animation. The next phase, what we'll be doing is we'll be styling all of these, adding round corners, adding the text to the bottom of the image itself. So yeah, apart from this, any other questions? I guess I've exceeded. It's almost been 2 hours now. I hope you guys are not bored.
No, Abur. Actually, I have just attended this session only today because I missed the earlier
Oh,
sessions,
oh okay, okay.
and it's quite good. I hope
Oh,
other
thank you
sessions
so
are
much.
also like that only.
Yeah, 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 equally good. Yeah, but I think so. If you have experience with Flutter, I think so. The other courses, yeah, I think so. Maybe you might have just raced through them. That'd be cool.
True, true.
Yeah. Okay, but thank
So
you, Om Prakash, for that feedback.
you're having
I
tomorrow also
guess.
this session or
Oh no, I think so. On Monday will be the phase two session. Yeah.
Monday?
So on phase two, let me just give you an example of what we'll be doing next. Just show you on WhatsApp. Just give me 1 second here. Uh, Yeah, I think so. If you look at the group, I think so it's this one, right? We'll yeah, I'll be adding all these styling.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll be adding like a glass frosted feature. Yeah, like a pseudo glass feature, which will be on top of the image, almost like a pseudo glass effect. So that will be doing next.
All right. Maybe if you can just add it, no, in the models, that JSON, no, that mapping through the JSON
Oh yeah, this one. Okay, this one. Yeah.
in the model itself,
Okay,
something like
okay, like make it like clean up a bit and add it here
yeah,
itself.
key, yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah. I think so. I think so. Like that is a good way, but I think so. Another good way is what if we have a server slave for this? Because
Mhm,
once we get started with a networking class, we'll be
mhm.
creating serializers and deserializers. So I think
Okay,
so that will be a good place to put them, right? Maybe.
correct. Okay, that will also be fine.
Right. Okay. But if yeah, but for time being, yeah, that's for this GitHub repo, I will add it definitely to the to itself. Yeah. That can easily the font here. That's a good point. Thanks. Thank you, Aburaj. I will change the U. Okay. Okay then. I guess I will conclude with this session here. So thank you so much for all those who attended.
All-
I hope it was not confusing.
that hard is Krishan. Okay, okay. Okay, Krishan, and see you all.